What was the
And I'm seeing
what was the archetype? We're live.
moving from the shadow of the hero archetype, which is all dominant yang energy of like really all the females, in the workplace getting it done. And so it's part of the evolution of consciousness to especially for women to come into this hero archetype and then really focus there for a long time, but it's not sustainable to be in that energy because it's so heavily yang and like overpowering. And so that needs to be then shifted into healing the father archetype. And so that's what I came into was the imprint of my own father and really how that lies dormant in my system and really needing to heal that. And there's been some interesting work as far as psychoanalysts or psychologists who have really been studying these archetypes in women and the evolution of consciousness for like 20 years as far as they call it the mysterial sequence. And so they've really outlined the gates that happen through the healing process and what that looks like. So really big shift for me. And I'm seeing
So
that a
that
lot of But I'm seeing a lot of women in business coming into the same experience. Is like now we're going into the shadow of the father.
yeah, and so that was a big deal for that. That happened after the last show.
Yeah, because I really had to look hard at like what I was coming across as, and like not being
Oh, you
able to
were
be
looking at.
vulnerable.
Yeah, you were watching the. Oh, I remember. I got that message from you. I'm like, hey man, everything's cool. I was all right.
I
I didn't.
know, but I
One
could.
thing I mean, I know people because like I got a message yesterday from um, Jason, and he said I just watched the show, and I know people go back and watch him, and I actually think that's a really good idea for exactly the reason that you're talking about. Not to look at how did I do, but look at yourself. Yeah, but I pretty much stopped looking at mine a long time ago. Yeah, like I mean a long like 1,000 videos ago. Every now and then I'll go in just to feel the energy, but I think that's a great tool. It's different for me because I'm on all the time. So it's become an evolution of where I can pretty much stay and just, in my space or whatever. And a lot of times I'm listening and holding space. But for someone to come on and make no there's no doubt that I don't care who you are, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. So, yeah, it's a really good way to fast track, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
to see
know?
yourself. Yeah, because how I experience the field is really through visualization. So and I did another summit, and so as soon as I really popped into my shadow, I could see it. I could
Yeah.
see the energy of it. I could see the visualization of it, and I could see all of it. And so, it was really domineering masculine power that came on for me, and so. Yeah, I really had to look at that objectively, and it's really not easy to look at yourself objectively. It's really easy to be objective with other people, but you can't turn that telescope around on yourself very easily,
Mm-mm.
right? And so that's why it's so powerful to come into relationship with other people, which I'm being forced to do more so and more are, showing up to be a mirror and help me. And so then I, really have to look at myself because the shadow comes through other people. You kind of,
Yeah.
so as I explain in my book is the entanglement theory and how we're really actually shape shifting other people's shadow for them and so we kind of lose ourselves in relationship aspect and we're really just mirroring and Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, but it's really when all of your cells are entangled with the other person's shadow and frequency, and you just pop out and explore each other's shadow through that coaxial and bond. And so it's really challenging to put yourself into a relationship where people are going to critique you, because then you have to look at your shadow and
Yeah.
your shit.
So
So,
what two things I find really interesting. One, just so everybody understands what you're talking about. You came on the show last time. You went back and rewatched the show, and you discovered shadow, what you're calling shadow, within yourself as a springboard for expansion. But you also brought up, which I think is real interesting, because you sent me a note, and I don't remember the details of it, but I just remember telling you, that everything was cool. I didn't have any issues with nothing. But I have gotten, and that you're talking about the masculine present in a feminine incarnation, and that
oh
whole
yeah.
evolution that you referred to earlier, where they had to take that role on, right? But I have had some females come on, and I did notice their out of control masculinity. Nothing. I didn't see that at all with. I didn't see that at all with you. In fact, one of them, after we've done, yeah, and so I ran into her, and she said, "Well, the next show we do, we're going to do better." Now she went back and watched the shows we've done, and she said we were abrupt. We were abrupt. And I thought to
We?
myself, yeah, that's what I said. I thought to myself, I wasn't
Is she
abrupt. I
speaking
didn't,
French?
well,
Because
I mean, it
we
was just
shit.
like,
Yeah.
well, and I think what she noticed was how much she interrupted and didn't listen. And it was a straight masculine imbalance, So it's interesting that you bring that up. I think that's very helpful to people. I think that's very helpful to people. Can you just go back over what that archetype was that you discovered again, so people that didn't come in will get an understanding of what you're talking about? Because I think it's very important.
So through the evolution of female consciousness specifically, but I think it's all consciousness. There's there's the hero's journey, which is a story, which is an archetypal story that is at the forefront of all movies, and it's a hero goes into the underworld and comes back with a gift to bring to its society, and so once we go into the underworld, that's really our unconscious, or what the underworld is, part of the dark night of the soul, is really to go into that dark place and that depressive state, to really connect with yourself, but it's part of awakening as well. And so once you come out of that space, then you understand that you have a tool or you have a gift to provide, but then you have all the necessary shadow work to process out until you can become more of an embodied witness to what you would choose to have, as you are in servitude to other people. And so after you're on that hero's journey, you come into the hero archetype, which is purely masculine driven. And so it's women in society that want a career, and so it's just very head-centered domineering energy, and it's just very yang, and you can't stop going, and there's no feminine to offset that yang energy or balance you into an energy that is sustainable, because the hero energy is not sustainable. It's too headstrong, it's too driven, it's too masculine, it's too domineering. And so then there's more archetypes that need to be gone into after in the evolution of consciousness. And so that hero archetype then is covering over the father wound. So
Mm,
so then, because it's our own father's energetic imprint and psychological institutions imprinted into our system, which I explain in my book, of how we really imprint and mimic through the field of our own experience. And then, so we have to heal then from the father archetypal imprint, and then there's more that they've explored through what they call the mysterious sequence, and they've written a book on this as they've seen women come into power and really the evolution of their consciousness through that time. But I'm seeing a lot of women coming into that energy landscape right now, as far as their masculine deficit, and how they were raised and parented and nurtured, and really coming to terms with that. But it's also part of the hero's journey, as it's written, as a
Yeah.
father atonement, and really coming to terms with the father.
So is it a masculine deficit that shows up as an overly masculine frequency, such as control, cutting people off? I don't know what else the other ones would be. Like you said, just too strong, too strong, too strong, too strong, abrupt. Okay.
So there's
Uh,
lots of different ways that you could look at it. Did you have more to add to the question?
no, no, no. I'm just saying
Uh-huh.
it's a deficit that when you look on the expressive side, or what they're putting out there, it is overly masculine. So the deficit shows as overly masculine, or does that not jive?
Well, yeah. So Carl Jung explored the anima, the animus. And so the anima is our feminine expression, the animus is our masculine expression. And so what happens in consciousness, or these imprints, is that we become possessed by the animus or the anima. And so you can see men being really castrated and possessed by the anima and being too feminine. And then you see women being overbearing and ball busting and overly domineering. But when you come to terms with the animus, it's really a messenger to the god. So it becomes your friend when you come to terms and you can see it clearly. There's a lot of work to be done in the underlayers of the shadow and stuff like that before, but then the animus becomes a helper, like much like Hermes. He kind of connects you, with your guides and whispers, to become a helper, or like a spirit guide, really, that kind of
Yeah, yeah,
whispers. And yeah.
yeah. So and then where does astrology fit in? Where does that come in with the presence of the archetypes? So different planets and different constellations representing different archetypes?
Yeah. Yep. And so what I'm working on now is rendering a visual representation of how the archetypes in the subconscious are entangled and distributed, or the archetypes in the cosmos are entangled and heavily distributed in the archetypes of the subconscious. Because once you understand the psychologies and the energetic imprints of each one of the archetypes in the cosmos, you can understand then their significance in your life.
Okay.
And but it's a broad study. There's lots of schools of thought in astrology, but I use it for shadow work and depth psychology, and really to analyze the collective unconscious and what we're all going through at the same time, and really the evolution of the collective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the story, like in the hero's journey, and so you're actually a practitioner, but you also keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening to the collective body, the single body of the collective, based on the archetypes, the psychology, and then of course the astrology, right?
Yep. And really, yeah, it becomes so interesting to see how different people digest, the energy that's coming through, and give it a certain dialect and really give a name to what it is. And so like Rick Jewers and everyone that really tries to analyze the energetics, astrology is really just another way to give a name to what doesn't have a name. And so like for instance right now, why it's so heavily dense is because we're going to be in this conjunction of Saturn and Pluto for another year. But now we have and these are somewhat transpersonal planets. Pluto is very far out there, but Saturn is within the realm of our forefront in our psyche. But we're getting a personal planet, Venus, right there. And that's why it feels so dense right now, is because there's a personal planet which is very close to Earth and very connected to our consciousness, conjuncting these two until the end of February, and that's why it feels so dense right now and so real. And people are really, really being convinced in their thoughts and their stories and feeling like, usually we have like a multi-dimensional access here, but now it's really so dense. We're just like jam-packed in our bodies, and we can't necessarily get up into the higher realms of because of this conjunction. And so we're working through all things, putting things into real time, and creating systems, and coming into nurturing ourselves, and growing an affection for ourselves and our resources. And so it's really challenging because it's so dense, and so we're not able to be up in the ether like we usually are. And so it's still
Yeah.
interesting to analyze what's going on.
I like that. I feel that. I see that. It's like even for those who have been out there in the ethers so much, we still got to bring it back into the human. And even those that were not, it's like all the we're being, for lack of a better word, forced into our bodies to actually experience and discover and embrace and expand what we're actually doing here, which is being a human being. You're being Allison. I'm being, but yeah, I love that the correlation though of that astrology gives us a point of reference. A lot of people look at it as synchronicities. I've always had a kind of a challenge with there's synchronicities because they do the same thing all the time, right? But there are some signs, and it goes back into astrotheology and to all back to the primitive cultures, the indigenous cultures. I mean, it's not, if any at a minimum, it's got to be a roadmap that we left ourselves when we put this thing together. I mean, at a minimum,
But no
but
shit, because it's all by plan, right? And
yeah,
so that's
yeah,
why we have to really let go of control, or the illusion of
yeah,
control, and just work with what we're given at any point in time. And so that's
yeah,
really the focus of my healing system, is whatever problem is coming through your existence right now is the point of focus, and is what the
yeah.
universe is asking you to heal. And so
I just, I
not
just, I got to tell you before I forget, because I've had a rough morning. I'm not making
I heard.
excuses, but I just got hit with a direct transmission or communication from your
Right
higher
now.
self. I actually heard the words, yeah, and I'll tell you about it after the show.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
going to remind
I'll
you.
talk Morgan about it too. Yeah, that was kind of cool. I've had a lot of experiences like that on this show. Multiple streams coming at me, and but that was pretty clear, pretty cool.
Yeah, and one
So
day when I
yeah,
reached out to you on Messenger, all of a sudden you started talking to me up in the ether, and then I let you know
yeah.
through Messenger, and that's cool. You
Is
like
that what
responded
happened?
as
Yeah,
soon as I had a thought. You responded, and I was like,
yeah.
oh hey.
That happened to me this morning. This lady had written me from Northern California in December, and she's one of those that's in the background. She's in her 70s. She's been doing the work for years. She puts out some great stuff very quietly. I didn't know who she was. I'd seen her a little bit, and some of her stuff was pretty good. Well, she wrote me this message of support, and offering a couple of things. And I could swear, as sure as I'm sitting here, I've had a conversation with this lady. I've talked to her about it and the whole 9 yards. And I went and looked at the message today for some reason, and I never responded to her. So I feel like that occurred in the ethers. There's no doubt. Yeah. So you have a chart or something to refer to for today as an example, so people can understand, um, kind of get more acquainted with your way of assisting, right?
Yeah, and so I use astrology, and I've coined myself a depth astrologer. So I use astrology to help people do shadow work, but I also just do astrology readings. But for you, I want to focus on your life path reading, and so or your soul's path reading, and so really because I'm seeing a lot of people that still don't know what they're supposed to be doing yet. And they don't have a clear purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really want people to be able to understand themselves, because I didn't understand myself, and I didn't necessarily have a relationship like what we were talking about, that I could see myself clearly until I looked into the mirror of my birth chart. Like, I didn't know what I was supposed to do or become, and still until I could see through astrology and the meaning behind all the placements, and really why it was so hard for me to confront my purpose. And so there's just so much information in your chart that gives you access to dimensions and space time that you don't necessarily have access to. And so it's really powerful for me to be able to mirror people's birth charts for them, and just provide them their own excellency, and just mirror for them what it is that they're supposed to do. You know, they already somewhat have it, but
Yeah.
it really needs to be brought into their conscious mind. So for you, so so we'll focus on the north node and the south node. And so the north node is called Rahu in Vedic astrology, and it's the dragon's head. And so it doesn't have a body; it's just a head. So it becomes obsessive, and it becomes obsessive to put you on your course. But there's obviously shadow aspects of this obsession, right? Of this, just like me, having this domineering quality, and really wanting to come into power, but there's a polarity to being in power or being successful, and that's great humility, and really servitude. And so there's always shadow aspects of these placements as well. And so that's why it's important for me to really help people process through
Yeah.
their placements and understand. So for you, your north node is in your 12th house, and so this is spirituality. And so the 12th house represents spirituality, isolation, enlightenment, your subconscious, but also your dreamscape, because it's the psyche, and it's all things Neptune, and so it's transcendental. And so but there's a shadow aspect of Neptune too, which is dissociation, drug and alcohol use, evasive, being isolation, but also victimhood. And so So for you, this isolation is necessary because that's where we go to ashrams in order to connect, because that's where we can become enlightened. You know, this is a very solo journey as far as enlightenment and our soul's evolution. And so, but for you, it's like overseas ventures and travels too, and connecting people and resources. And so, so the south node, the polarity of this is south node, which is the dragon's lair, which actually has a separation. So the north node is obsessive, but the south node separates us from what we've mastered in past lives. And so for you, it's work and enemies and stick-to-itiveness and paying bills and being of service at the highest function of the sixth house, which is Virgo. And so you've mastered all of those things in past lives. And so there's a separation of these routine things that seem mundane and all the things that take really hard work to practice and feel connected to, like diet and things like that. And so the evolution of your soul then in this lifetime or in this carnation is to get out of that regime dynamic, which is really the thinking mind too, though, because it's all things practicality. And so instead of being practical, it's like you are more connected to the 12th house and all things spirituality, and instead. And so then your point of focus is really the spiritual dimension and the subconscious, and really processing that. So how do you think that connects with you and your experience?
Well, yeah, I think the North Node and then the 12th house thing that jives, and the shadow side jives. You know, disassociation, isolation. I've done a lot of stuff. I did have a problem with addiction in regard to one or two or three different things you would ingest. Um, yeah, that part. And then I've had some. Judith Kuzel did a soul reading for me. She's very expert. I know a lot of people would have gotten it, which has to do with the past lives. Earth incarnations primarily, some galactic, but and so that kind of jives with what you were saying about the South Node. Of course, the bringing people together and kind of big picture type of thing, and then that separation of the mundane things and I totally get that, because that's a really that's been a really powerful opportunity for me and I'm still getting there, but it's been a real powerful opportunity for me to take those mundane things and the things that really excite me that are work related and find this middle ground, which I'm headed that way here in the next 2 or 3 weeks, because Morgan's going to go back to Australia to be with her first grandchild and spend some time there, and so I'm going to be alone again. And the funny thing is that when she came the other 2 times, when she left, I spun out. I didn't know this till about 3 or 4 weeks ago. She obviously did and tried to tell me, and I'm sure I didn't listen. But you can only, uh, you know, gain by the experience and the awareness of the experience. Typically, that's in retrospect, right? So, but what I realized was, I love the work. I love what I'm doing. I work on myself every day, but I get bored and I get lonely. And that was a pattern that I had for a long time, beginning when I went on the street 7 years ago. And so there's a great benefit to that universal isolation, but on the other hand, you're totally dehumanizing yourself. So, or medicating yourself, or disassociation, which is something she pointed out to me like less than a week ago. And said, I
Wow.
think I figured it out. I'm like, oh shit, you're right. So it was like right down to my conversational frequency when something was brought up, and many other things. So, but now I'm ready. So now I'm going to walk into it, and I've got some stability. We've got a more firmer plan. Universe is Soulogy, the energy of Soulogy is in it with us. I mean, it's a lot of good things happening. So um, I feel I'm prepared to go into semi isolation and continue to work steadily and and I would say to um, accept the mundane, to integrate with the mundane, so that it's not mundane. And to give you just one last example, real quick. So we woke up at midnight last night after going to bed at 10. We were up till almost 6 in the morning. We're just like, what the hell's going on? We knew something was happening. And so I started getting, what people call ascension flu symptoms or whatever. So I was getting achy and everything but a fever. So I said, okay, now I'm getting a headache. And she said, well, if you remember 2 days ago, this all happened to me. And when I went to the headache thing, I just, in other words, just integrated with the headache. And so that's what I did. And that's what I'm talking about, what I've learned since then, this morning, and then talking to you, that and actually being faced with this before this show started in my own mind. What are you going to do? This is the reality, and that's what I see. I will integrate and merge with what I was judging as mundane. Yeah, that's a big benefit for me. It really
Yeah.
is.
It's like full acceptance of what is, and so then when you can accept it fully and not resist it, or say no, I don't want this headache, then the pain and the suffering subsides, because when reject what is,
Yeah,
there's a lot more suffering if there's
yeah.
non acceptance. Yeah,
I tried
that's
something
really
else
cool.
today. I tried something else today you might be interested in, and others might be interested in, uh, that I learned from her. And it actually was kind of brought up on the show about food with Jason Estes yesterday. But so I had some Tylenol. I had some 8-hour Tylenol. That's like a double dose. And I said, oh, I got some Tylenol. So I thought, well, maybe if I take a couple of hits of Tylenol, um, I'll figure it out. Like I got to break
I
the
hate
sweat.
a Tylenol.
So then she said, I don't know. I don't like it either. So she says to me, well, or I had picked up from her, you can always align with the Tylenol. So I thought, okay. So I went and got the bottle, and I sat there at the table, and I was like, okay, I'm a lot. I read about what does it do actually, and I read and I got in touch with my symptoms, and that's what I did. And then I ate a bowl of oatmeal, and I broke a sweat, and I felt better. So I thought that was interesting. I think maybe that's something that we can all start. Things like that are things that we can start to do, because this is who we are. Now that not all the shadow work, but now that a significant amount of the shadow work has been done.
It's interesting because, kind of to mirror your experience, kind of what I'm integrating is, and what I've worked through with some other people, is like manipulation. And so, like, getting your needs met, or manipulating your environment, or being able to manipulate form, or and really being able to manipulate the field, or um, intend on producing something, or an intentional relationship with your Tylenol, being able to really go in and align with it first, is kind of like a shamanic practice of, like, really like a multi-dimensional view of Okay, so that can be a shadow aspect of people, with manipulative tendencies, and or who don't want to manipulate their environment. The shadow aspect of Libra, who don't want to affect other people, or really want to allow us to be as they are without and be very diplomatic, but
Yeah.
I'm not manipulative, or and so not affecting the field. But we really have to affect the field, because
Yeah.
we have to put ourselves out there. And so
Yeah.
aligning with that intention, it just shows up more and more and more,
Yeah.
as like, okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing, and you're on the right path. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen that coming out of the woodwork of my shadow. So
One of the things that I ran into 2 or 3 days ago by myself. I went for a walk, and it was a lot of information, but I tried to like break it down. So it was basically, yeah, people always talk about boundaries, 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 and the way that I perceived it, and this is just my own discernment or my own evolution, was like it just sounds like separation. But then I got this image of the 0 point, and me as the 0 point, and basically the boundaries is the projection of the energy. It's not like holding the line and it's just the force of the energy is the boundaries, the walls of the 0 point. Being to thy no self be true, radiating,
yeah.
radiating. I saw radiating walls or boundaries, and they were not separate. I can't draw very good, but if I could probably show you. But it was an integration with everything outside of itself, and there was like a space, like between salt water and brackish, salt water and fresh water. They call it brackish water when a river runs into the sea, and so it was like that space there, right? It was like, or not like a limbo, but it was Bible, and it was creative. It was like a creative force. I don't know, but I thought that was interesting. For me, that was a big step for me. It was.
So being the observer and just having that be your energetic boundary, not to be infiltrated by someone else's field, but just remain intentional and discern, what is it, what is an observation, or what is clearly not mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
yeah. So
this
so that go ahead.
no, you go ahead. I
So
was
is that
gonna
something that that you saw as the field just doing by itself? That it just does that? That's how
no,
it operates?
no.
Oh, you have to affect it that way?
Yeah, because
Okay.
what I'm getting is as this thing gets deeper is my thoughts, right? Uh no sarcasm, I said a few months ago, and then it's gone deeper and deeper, and then just not disassociating or blocking anything out, because that's where I had kind of a problem with the word boundaries. But to be able to look at something, like I saw something today, this morning, and it was a few people who I've collaborated with. Uh, and as time's gone on, I can't get back on messages. I mean, this has been going on for a while. It's a lot of work. Thank God Morgan's here loading the schedule up, because it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy to be present and from one type of person to another all day long. But anyway, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that
No,
maybe
it's not an excuse. It's a
I know
lot of energy to take on.
it is, and
It's a
so like
lot.
there was a group of people, 6 or 7 or 8 different people, and I noticed that they had uh, congealed. They might have all had an issue with me, or a misunderstanding, or whatever. I don't know. But what I really liked about it was I was able to look at it and go, "Wow, these 7 or 8 people have formed a little nucleus, and that's cool." In other words, they're supporting each other. They're alike vibrations. So where in the past I might be going, "Hey, what the hell's their problem?" You know what I mean? So
Oh,
that,
because you want to be isolated, and so.
yeah. Well, from that standpoint, that's what I was saying. Is I realized that when I looked in that 0 point with the two boundaries, that the radiating radiating my boundaries is different than just putting my arms up and saying no one's coming in. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, a huge difference in that. Yeah, because the feminine is inclusive, right? We're supposed to love everyone and not have any boundaries. But the masculine is exclusive, and exclusivity is just having a boundary with bullshit, right? It's
Yeah,
just really having a boundary and respect, a self-respect. And a boundary with other people's bullshit that is clearly not yours and clearly has nothing to do with you, even though it's printed onto you.
yeah,
You know, like it doesn't belong to you. You'll know if it's yours. It has something to do with you. But as soon as I enter into the field and I say that someone else's shit is my shit, their energy takes over my system and it's fucking chaos for the rest of
yeah,
the day. And so as soon as I pick up that piece of shit that they laid down and claimed that it was mine, then I get covered in shit all day long. And so that's the boundary is like, I can clearly see your shit and I'm not going to play with it. And so,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Or it doesn't even have to be shit. It could just be none of your business. You know what I mean? That's their stuff, and you got your stuff. You
yeah, and
know,
you can really even just feel that now, though. It's like their low vibrational offering is really, there's no reason to expand upon it or answer their
no,
questions,
no,
right? And so,
no.
yeah.
Yeah, I got the question, and it was, why don't you talk to me? I mean, this person is. Yeah, I would just make up a number. There's 500 people as close or distant to me than this person, right? I don't answer anybody because I just don't have the time and whatever. But and I thought to myself, well, how do I answer? And that's what my struggle's been for the last year or so.
But,
Is I find
but,
the best thing to do is say nothing. You know,
and that's a
I
boundary
and I
because
just
there's
say,
nothing,
yeah,
yeah.
I say it here. Like I spoke to you. I don't know if I consciously spoke to you, but you felt me come in somehow or another. My energy and your energy connected in the ethers, and I have to believe that's, we can't talk it and not walk it. You know, we if you and I sit in a room together for the first time we meet, and the rules are we can't say a damn thing to each other, and you sit in one chair and I sit in the other, we'd be able to sit there and pretty much figure out what's going on. Are we resonating with each other? Yeah, I mean, we could, no doubt.
Yeah, just energetics alone. Yeah.
So this
Yep.
Jupiter with Pluto, with Venus poking her head in,
Well, it's
what
Saturn and Pluto.
Saturn and Pluto, what does that
Uh-huh.
what does that look like to a physical human incarnation in general? What does
Right,
that look?
and so that's really why I am really focused on coming out and putting more information out there, is because this is the point where people go lose their shit, go into a mental institution, get diagnosed with some shit based on this transit, because they can't, because you're so in the form, right? You're so in the mind and it's so constrained. The energy is so constrained that you can't even see last week when you were perfectly fine. And so people will take this energy and be so stuck in it and so convinced that this is them, right? And can't see past, present, future clearly because they're just stuck and bogged down by this energy. And they're going to go get diagnosed based on this energy, based on this transit. They're going to go get on a medical, you know, subscription or a prescription to a chemical chaos for years, right? And like, and so it's really, it's so dense, and that's really my point of focus is like the the transits are not diagnosable diseases, and so it's just they have to know what's going on, and this isn't diagnosable, and it's you can't you can't be convinced in the storyline of whatever this transit is bringing for you, and you're gonna be stuck in your body, and your mind is gonna convince you that this is fucking horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we have to observe this reality still. We have to remain in the observer and let it allow something to come through, right? Because I haven't been in a full blown archetype in so long that these dense energies are necessary to pop shit out. And that's what they're useful for. And that's the reason for them, is to pop shit out we don't have access to normally. And
Yeah.
so we have to use this energy to be able to see what's coming through our experience and be able to label it, not outside of mind though.
Yeah.
Really not being convinced by the mind, but observing all the thoughts, all the feelings, and everything that's coming
Yeah.
up, because it needs you to look at it and then
Yeah.
heal it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And so, from someone else's perspective, I see what my kids are going through, and it's fucking hard. They're really convinced, in all their issues right now, especially my 10-year-old. And so it's just like, fuck, like it's not just her. And so it becomes a point of, you know, really heated shit in our house, and really, because she's so convinced that this is always and never, always and never statements are coming up, and she can't see herself clearly. She can't see last week clearly. She can't see yesterday clearly. And so I just really need to make more for people to kind of understand from a quantum perspective, how to heal through the transits, how to use the transits, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something that's got to gain a wider awareness. People have to have a wider awareness about it, because it is old school in the best of ways. Like a lot of the things that have survived as truths, as something you can actually count on that has some history, which astrology obviously has history, man, because it's doing the same thing all the time with a comet here and an eclipse there. And, this is important, especially now, because regardless of what's happened in the past, there's an absolute tangible elevation, acceleration of energy, which is all being projected onto us in a way to look at ourselves. And so, yeah, it is more intense, but we have a hell of an opportunity. I think that's why we came. I think
Oh,
this
for
is this is a
sure.
big year. Yeah,
Oh,
this
for
year's
sure.
a really really exciting. I think it's a huge opportunity for collaboration, and you know,
It, it's so interesting that January took a year, right? And now we're in the second year of this year, which is February. We're only
right,
halfway through this shit.
right,
And it's
yeah.
like, Jesus Christ. Like,
It,
how could this move any slower? Like, it's just so tangible, And like, we're really taking our time to
yeah,
connect and,
yeah, yeah. Time is like ridiculously slow. The 12th, the 13th, 14th, you know, and one of the things that Morgan pulled in 4 or 5 days ago was release detached from the mind. And to me that was like wow, and I thought about it for like 4 or 5 days, and then I had something happen to me that was I'm going to talk about eventually. It was actually pretty funny, but it was actually also very spectacular. We were both in it, but it was kind of anyway. My point is, I realized in that moment that detaching from that mind, so being the observer and all that things that we talk about, but in a way that I could experience it and actually feel it, that all the shadow is neutralized. Just staying in that space, it's just like, and I'm not saying I can do it all the time, but what I do know is when I don't do it, things happen that are less than comfortable. Let's put it that way. And
yeah, and so through my experience, the best way to do that is go on an all fruit diet. Is
yeah,
really That's when your thoughts and feelings become apparent outside of you. They are
mm,
little thought bubbles and feeling bubbles that you can just pop. And so they don't exist in the realm of the vibration of just fruit. And it's really, you can really see the field then, like you get vibrant colors. It's like you're tripping balls, but you're sober, and like it's in real time, and like so the energy is like dynamic. The colors are brighter. Everything is just like sparkling, and like, and so that's when shadow really neutralizes, and you become one because of that symbiotic relationship with fruit and carbohydrates, because we're carbon
Yeah.
based beings. And but outside of that, if you don't have the balls to do that, you can really, for me, after I, had a catastrophic awakening, I couldn't listen to anyone but enlightened beings. There was a frequency that, like, if you were talking about spirituality from a lower realm than already being there, I couldn't listen to you speak. And so some of the people who come on your show, and they talk about 3D, 4D, 5D, and they're not there, and it's really obvious, it becomes
Mhm.
hard. And I can
Yeah.
see your face, and it becomes really hard, to listen and pay attention.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
I'm not making
because
any
it,
comments.
but it's really hard though, because you know, um, it's that shared frequency.
Yeah.
It's just, it's also the mundane though,
Yeah.
and being able to see beyond the illusion of of that of the place where they're stuck. And so the point really now, is the most identifiable, or the archetype that we can most identify with is the victim. And so with all this dense energy, people are really going to be encompassing the victim,
Mm,
and because that's where you can really identify yourself, because we all have that shared victimhood, and that's where we can really come together and agree, and bitch about all the things that are fucking wrong, and like that's our place of power when we're identified, and so that's really a lot about what people are going to experience, from a 3D, 4D perspective, and this really dense energy is victimhood, and really, that meaning in their life, and how that plays out for them. Because it's so easy to get identified in victimhood, because we just all agree, and it's a power and frustration, right? When we're angry at something, right, the system
yeah.
or the government, that feels powerful because we all agree in that, right? But we have no power there. We're still governed, and we're still, so that's not our point of power. Is by any means, is, well, first of all, identification with any of the archetypes, but especially victimhood, or the outrage machine, or the truther movement about what's wrong with
Yeah.
everything. And
Yeah. Or even identifying with the alternate news that supposedly is reporting everything accurately. I mean, I try to keep my finger on things. I don't spend a lot of time because you don't have to. You can pick up the energy pretty quick with somebody's videos. But I thought to myself this morning, I'm tired of hearing about this shit. I'm tired of hearing about Q. I'm tired of hearing about Trump reforming. I'm not. This is not politics. I'm talking. I'm not talking about. There's no savior out there. The apocalypse is the unveiling. That means everything. So if there's a government out there or a church or anything that's really legit, then everything comes down. And they say, "Oh, well, we don't want to shock you." Bullshit. If you've made spaceships, let us know. If you travel to Mars, let us know. If there's a cure for cancer, we already know there is. Let us know. What happened JFK? What happened 9/11? Let us know. Bullshit. If you can't sit up there and do that, I'm sorry. You know what? And I disagree. You don't have any power over me. I'm a sovereign priestess, and we run this show. So I just think that it's going to happen when we do it for ourselves, when we unveil ourselves, just like you started this whole idea of the show out and sent me the note. I mean, you actually went in and observed yourself, became uncomfortable, and you took care of business and elevated as a result of that, and created a contagious uh, soul activation for other people by doing it. This is how the external change. I mean to go on a tangent. So freaky.
I can't hear you. What'd you say?
I said I didn't mean to go on a tangent. Sound like a preacher.
Oh, no, it's really accurate and good because a victim needs a savior, right? And
Yeah,
so it's like no one's coming to save you. There's no one day that like all the money is going to be free, or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah. That's
really
enough.
it's
Yeah,
really
that's
our own hero's journey in becoming our own savior, but also you find your most connected point of power when you become someone else's miracle,
yeah,
and really you focus on serving because
yeah,
that's the polarity of power, is that humility and connection and
yeah,
availability.
yeah.
And so yeah,
All,
no one's coming to save you. You have to do it yourself.
that's right.
You have to
That's
do it
right.
all by yourself,
It's
I
time to get off
promise you.
the tit. It's time
Unless
to
you
get off.
hire me, then I'll shift you fucking quick as shit. And
So,
so
so tell us, how long does a session take? Is it more than one session? And anything else you can provide before we sign out, so the people will know.
so um the most powerful thing that I do is I built a therapy model or a counseling system, which takes about an hour and a half. And that's really when we get into each of the shadows. And I explain the prism to you as the mind of God, and then it shines into the crystal or the form, the triangle, right, which is the Trinity or the form, and then it refracts into the layers of consciousness and the chakra system. But the part of my book I was working on today is not that, was quantum tunneling, and so this is a really advanced quantum physics theory and concept that I explain as a psychic mechanism, actually, and so it's not the light of God that shines into the shadow necessarily. It's actually the space in which all of these things occur. And so our human system becomes the most powerful technology in the world because the more space and the more work that we do, the more frequency we have to offer other people. And so
Yeah,
when I come into a session with you, there's so much space in my field for you to unravel, right? And so really allowing these things to occur naturally. So even after a session with me, which is transformative and it takes a fucking hour and a half and you'll never be the same, you start processing on the layer where psyche and on the layer of where spirit and matter converge, which is in the psyche. And so you start processing your psyche and your shadow work on the level that the field would have you do it from there on out. And so I just allow you in the space of my own field because I've done so much work and I've, transcended duality. So coming into my field, you get activated, into your light body, but also into the observer, and you start shape-shifting your reality and processing in a way that allows you to level up your existence in like no time. And so in that first session, you're shifting immediately. And you'll never be the same. And so then you start processing as you're more connected. Everything's more vivid. Everything starts mirroring your experience. You start really getting into what I'm coming to terms with is this shamanic dance that I'm doing with the psyche now. And, I don't like to put a label to things. I don't call myself a healer. I don't do any of that, but it's really a multi-dimensional aspect to psychology, quantum physics, and quantum everything. And so it's just the quantum field, leaving it as it lay, but understanding through my experience how it actually works is how I can transform your life, and then help you process out further from that. And so then I'll do like astrology to help you. If you're looking for more layers of shadow, it's in your chart. And so we can continue to process out, and your dreamscape is a really good place to understand what's actually going on in your psyche. because there's all these archetypes at play, and you need to watch those dreams to understand that each person in your dream is actually an archetype, or so it's not representing other people. It's representing your own mechanics, and what parts want to reconnect, and
Right.
what your true feelings are, and what's going on under those layers, because we don't necessarily have access to that. Much like astrology, we don't have access to what's in your birth chart until I can read that for you. But we also have to analyze your dreamscape to understand what's actually at play in your psyche, and what part of your shadow is unraveling.
Very good.
Yeah,
Very good.
it's fun.
I'm just curious. Last question: Is there a good way, or a way that a method that how people can remember their dreams, their dreamscape, lucid dreams,
It's
and
It's getting more challenging as we're getting into these denser layers, but just really put an intention in, or ask to be shown, and then you have to wake up and write it down in the middle
mm,
of the night. You have to wake
mm,
up
mm,
and have that intention that you're going to wake up and write it down, because you're not going
mm.
to remember it
Yeah,
unless you wake up in the middle of it. It's, it becomes really
I
hard.
can't remember where the light switch is. You know, when I pick up the phone, like, what am I doing here? Allison Engel, everybody. She's going to put up her links. Let's support our brothers and sisters who are out there getting it done. We moved into a 5D commerce. It's equal energy exchange, and we can all pay it forward by gifting on the honor system. And thank you, Allison, for coming in. I look forward to more collaborations. And thank you for reading my chart and for everything that you do and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence. And best to you and your family.
Thank you. Are you going to tell me what that is all about? What you heard from me?
Yes, I will tell you later. I'm
Okay.
going to
The
talk to Morgan
suspense,
first.
Todd. The
No, it's
suspense.
nothing. It's nothing huge. It's actually, I don't know. It was your face and your voice, and it was just a message, just a constructive
Okay.
message in regard to collaboration and an idea, basically. And I thought, oh wow, that's
Nice.
kind of cool. So yeah,
Nice.
I'll talk to you about it the next couple of days. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right, you take
Awesome.
care.
Okay.
All
Bye
right, see
bye.
y'all. All right, bye bye.